right, we are back again with another brand new episode. I'm Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Well, we recently had on a guest who's got a yoga studio combined with her chiropractic office, and it's a hybrid, and it works for her and her approach to care and her personal interests as well. And another emerging trend in this hybrid clinic phenomenon is a gym or a fitness type of environment combined with a chiropractic practice. And if this is your jam, if it's what you like to do and you treat athletes, this perfectly dovetails into your clinic. It's a great way to get to know your patients and be able to follow through all the way, maybe from the care back into the gym or from the gym into your care if they want to increase their performance or get injured or something like that. So the guest today is Dr. Josh Satterlee, and Dr. Haley recently sat down with him. Now, he has got an extensive bio. I'm not going to get real deep into it, but he's more than qualified. He's A.R.T. certified. He's T.P.I. certified, and he put together a really good model for the clinic gym hybrid, and he has a podcast, and he has other guests that are in this same space, and they get together and they talk about their success stories, the things that are working for them, and really share their knowledge in this particular space. So I'm going to get out of the way, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy this interview with the rest of you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Satterlee, for joining us today on the Chiro Business Mojo podcast.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So can you start by telling us a little bit about how you got into chiropractic?
Yeah, sure. So there's a positive part and there's a sad part. So I'll start with the positive. I grew up and my sister had started going to a chiropractor, and I went to visit her one day and she said, "Hey, I have an appointment. You should go with me." You know, it's like I don't know how, it's kind of weird when your sister's like, "You should go to the doctor's appointment with me." But ended up meeting her chiropractor, a guy named Jim, and he was awesome. He was incredible and very nice guy and just very engaging. I noticed that everybody going in and out of his office was super happy. It was like the most positive energy of any quote unquote doctor's office I'd ever seen. I was like, wow, this is totally different, you know? It was awesome. So I was like, that kind of stuck a kernel in my mind, you know? And then I went to college, and I'd started out in college studying engineering and kind of moved away from that to athletic training. Like, I don't know, I was just attracted to kind of figuring out how the body worked and moved. Became like a strength coach for our college teams up there. I went to Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana, home of the Fighting Bobcats, of course. Let's see. So started working with those teams, and then I was traveling with the women's basketball team one time through Portland, and got paged in the airport like, "Josh Satterlee, pick up the white courtesy phone," which is weird because you never think that you will actually get paged. Right? It's always somebody from somewhere else. And somehow, and this is the saddest part of the story, somehow my mom had tracked me down and knew I was in the Portland airport traveling with the team, because she was calling me to tell me that my dad had been diagnosed with a massive brain tumor and was going in for emergency surgery. And they're trying to get me to talk to him before he went in. So my dad went through surgery. Good news, he survived, came out okay on the other side. Had what's called a glioblastoma multiforme stage 4, which is pretty bad news. Anyway, so I decided that year. So that was in around April. I think it was April. March, because we were at the tail end of the season. Yeah, so it'd have to be tail end of March. So then I came home for spring break, spent the week with him, and decided that I would take the following year off of college and just spend it with him. So I was about 2 years into college. And so I stayed with him to take care of him. My parents were actually divorced, and my mom and he had just stayed close enough that, you know, she would support him if anything like that came up. And along that path, like, we went to hundreds of doctor's appointments, and surgeons and oncologists and, you know, cardiologists and everything. And all those people were truly good people, and they all wanted him to do well and beat the cancer. And, but the one thing that stuck out is when it came to like management of pain. So when you have brain cancer, like, things start failing, right? Like, you have no innervation to major skeletal muscle. So your posture starts tanking, right? Mm-hmm. And so along the way, he's like, yeah, my back hurts, my leg hurts and all this. And so the doctors trying to help would go, well, here's, I'll write you a script for, fentanyl or oxycodone or whatever. And that they truly were trying to help. I'm not saying they were pushing drugs. They were trying to do what they had available to them to help. But an oncologist doesn't understand much about, they're like, hey, did I remove the cancer? Yes or no? Like, are we beating up that tumor? Yes or no? Like that's their success criteria, which is totally cool. And I appreciate every one of them for the job they did. But anyway, so along the way, my dad was like, yeah, my back hurts. Hey, why don't you call my friend who's a chiropractor? I'll go over there. So my dad was in like a business group with this chiropractor. I called him up. He said, bring your dad down. And the guy spent like half an hour, and it was dramatic change in the way my dad moved after that. And it would last for 3 or 4 or 5 days. I mean, like nothing lasts when you have brain cancer. Like not like you might wake up with the inability to like swallow one day. It's just a crazy journey. But I was just impressed. I'd go back there probably every week, sometimes twice a week. And he was the only guy that I saw along the whole path that was like, okay, you have pain in a specific area, and my job is to remove it. Much like the oncologist was like, you have a tumor in a specific area, my job is to remove it. And I was just impressed. I was like, man, this is what kind of I've been thinking about the whole time. It was very interesting. And then, and just seeing that experience and seeing that how much caring that guy had and just, there's something about like, I don't know, it sounds cheesy, but laying your hands on somebody, like they write that's a big part of the Bible, right? Is Jesus laid his hands upon people, not like Jesus wrote a prescription for, this blind man to see. Like it didn't work that way. And so I spent that year with my dad, and I saw that, and I got I experienced a ton of medicine from the caregiver side, and I was just impressed. Went back to college. Unfortunately, my dad passed away early the following year. I was at college. I went to college, finished out. Studying biomechanics, which was kind of an advantageous thing. Took all my engineering credits and actually counted towards the biology, or my early credits counted towards my late degree, and from there decided to go to chiropractic college to kind of put a cap on it, and here I am today.
Okay, so where did you end up going to school?
Los Angeles College of Chiropractic, or at that time it just changed its name to Southern California University of Health Sciences, which is a horrible acronym because it sounds like SCUZ, which I just don't think sounds appealing. But yeah, so I grew up in Southern California, so that was kind of like returning home. And with all the changes in my family, I thought it was good to come back from Montana, be around family, and we had a good couple of years there.
Yeah, good. And so what have you done since graduation?
Pretty much nothing. Sit on my hands and.
Okay. We'll talk to you.
Yeah, that was a great interview. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, great.
So I graduated December 2006 and moved out to Las Vegas from Southern California because at that time the economy in Las Vegas was exploding. And we were like, we're going to ride that rocket ship to the moon. And that rocket ship almost made it to the moon right before it crashed into like a meteor.
Yep. We graduated right when the meteor hit. So
yeah, I mean, it was bad news. But we started out here in Las Vegas, and like everybody, started new in practice, didn't work for anybody. And I think looking back, I would phrase it as worked our butts off to get patients. At the time, I think it felt more like was scared to death, running from one solution to the next, hoping that they would work. Meaning, I mean, my wife can recount the days I was in, called her crying because I approached 8 doctors and basically was like, yeah, there you go. Like, I was going to primary care providers to try and build relationships, and none of them seemed to, I couldn't move the needle on them, and just got crushed. Like, I've done the wrong thing. I've gone into the wrong profession. I shouldn't have opened a business, like all that fear. And somehow it worked out. Somehow we made it through the crashing economy. We had started with a larger office, scaled down to as small as you could be, one of these like pre-done for you offices with just 2 rooms or whatever. And the little half wall between your receptionist and the area in the back. And that at times is honestly like a blur. Like, I mean, just building relationships, shaking hands, doing everything you could to get involved with things. But along the way, I discovered I was doing a lot of A.R.T, active release technique. I had actually become full body certified before I graduated chiropractic college, which at the time was a big deal. Like to have a soft tissue management system. I laugh because now that's just like, that's almost like a requirement of graduation these days. Yeah. But so was certified in that, did a lot of those seminars, started teaching A.R.T, and then through that discovered the S.F.M.A. Because Greg Rose and Mike Voigt taught the S.F.M.A. to the A.R.T. instructors meeting in a day, which if you've ever taken the S.F.M.A. is an insane thing to do. So we learned it in a day, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a huge deal. This is going to change my practice. Got involved in that, and that's really when things started kind of turning around in the business. Like I felt like I could really make huge progress and got tons of referrals. And then I'd always been into golf. My dad was a big golfer. My grandfather was a professional golfer. S.F.M.A. is kind of tightly linked with T.P.I, the Titleist Performance Institute. And I started doing that, got involved in golf, and put together the best golf injury treatment facility in Las Vegas, and then ended up building a gym in conjunction with that. So we had the best. If you were a golfer in Vegas and you had an injury or wanted to train for the game, we had your solution. We were the best at it.
Awesome.
Yeah. So again, nothing. I haven't done anything in the last few years.
Well, that's awesome. I think, really owning what you're doing is definitely the way to go. I see a lot of people, they go after one thing and then it works for a while and then it stops working. And so then they go after another thing and, they're just always kind of on a high and then a low rather than staying focused in one direction moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because like success is like a horrible teacher. You're like, oh, I got 5 people from this. Is that because I smiled well, or the referral source liked me? Is it because I treated it like, you just don't know. And so you kind of grasp at what it was about that referral source that worked.
Yeah. Do you think, how do you feel about the extra certifications during school? When they're in school, do you think it's a good idea to go after that? Do you think people can overconsume that and spend too much money? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I heard a great quote from our accountant one time. He said, knowledge is knowing that tomatoes are a fruit, but wisdom is knowing not to put tomatoes in fruit salad. And I think like you get a lot of knowledge but when you can't apply it, it just doesn't. I would never want to discourage anybody from getting educated, because part of the process of education, going out to all these seminars, it helps shape what you want to do. And what I hope is that people go out and take 20 seminars and just one of them really makes their eyes twinkle. And when it does, it's like, all right, now, because if you don't have passion to push through those tough days of when you're getting your butt kicked, whatever, you have to develop passion somewhere. And if you're like, hey, listen, I'm trying to think something like, I see eyes twinkle a lot when certain women talk about working with pre and postnatal women. Like there is a magic that happens, not in all women, but in some female clinicians that just are like, that is the bee's knees right there. And then with some guys, like I see them, I want to work with, I have a friend who works with Scottish Games athletes. These are big, huge, mostly men who wear kilts and throw logs into the air. Like, they specialized kind of men. But for some reason, it made their eyes twinkle. And it's like, great, because when you are in those long days, at least you can love the hard work, And so if people are in school and they're taking a bunch of things, great. Like wait for the thing where you're just like, you just can't get enough of it, and then chase that down. The only downside, and I say this, I teach the S.F.M.A. now, and I teach, I'm an adjunct professor at Cleveland Chiropractic College. And I say that the downside of learning this now is you just haven't screwed up enough people. Like, that's how it was with me. When I learned it, I was like, this is going to change my practice, honestly, because like, this is the reason I screwed up that, Mrs. Day, like she hurt when she left my office, and I feel like a piece of junk for doing that. And I made me doubt whether or not I'm in the right business and if I'm even a good provider. And, I don't even think my dog would love me at that moment. And when I discovered a diagnostic process that would save me from ever feeling like that again, I go, oh my God, I want to learn everything I can about this. This is the most awesome thing ever. This is incredible, blah, blah, blah. I want to be involved in that. And when you're in school and you're taking all these classes, you just don't know any of that stuff because you haven't hurt anybody. I don't wish that we hurt people. It's just a reality of like, if you're providing really good care, you're not going to hit home runs every day. You're going to hit a lot of them, but every once in a while, you're going to totally screw somebody up, and you remember them. Oh, I hope you remember those, or you're like a sociopath, but
So I'm really familiar with A.R.T, but not, what is S.F.M.A?
Oh, wow. Yeah. The Selective Functional Movement Assessment. So, have you ever heard of the FMS? Okay. So, yeah. So here's the deal. Like, there are like multiple ways that you can diagnose somebody, right? Like pain, like, oh, where's your pain? And they point like, oh, it's right here in my knee. And it's like, all right, when you can think about, okay, what are the structures there that are pain generators, right? Or low back pain is probably like the most common in this world. So there's pain. We can also use like, radiology, right? Like we can take x-rays and MRIs and advanced imaging and look at joints. The limitation there is it's just like a snapshot at one moment, right? They're not moving, and oftentimes they're not even weight bearing. You can use palpation and like feel like that. That's a great way to, for joints, especially. It works very well. What else? You can use your history and your history and orthos and neuros to kind of put together a picture, right? Mm-hmm. But kind of the stance of the S.F.M.A. is most of the pain that we get is from too much movement or a lack of movement at a joint. So if, facet syndrome is from too much extension oftentimes, right? Like it doesn't really develop if you're stuck in flexion that often. So if that's the case, then we should look at the way you move and analyze the way you move and isolate where is the problem. And we kind of say like we use something called the joint by joint approach. So if you look at the human body, it's made up of a series of mobile joints connected by stable segments. And like if you just go from the bottom up, the structures they what do you call that? Alternate between mobile and stable. So like the foot should be a stable structure, right? Like if the arch collapses, that's a bad thing, right? It should be stable. The ankle joint should be mobile because it needs to adapt to terrain. Next major joint up is the knee joint, should be stable. You don't want it moving like varus or valgus, right? It can flex and extend, but you don't want to move. Then the hip is a ball and socket. If we're just going up, hip is a ball and socket. Ball and socket joints are meant to create a ton of movement, right? So it should be a mobile joint. And then we go to the low back. The low back typically, or our core, should be stable. We don't want too much rotation, for example, in the lumbar spine. And then the thoracic spine, more mobile. The scapulothoracic joint should be stable. The GH joint should be mobile. Blah, 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 blah. It just like follows that pattern. And if that pattern gets flipped, so if you make the knee a mobile joint, meaning it goes valgus, bad things typically happen. Maybe that's pain. Maybe that's instability. Maybe that's a lack of strength. But bad things happen, right? So the S.F.M.A. sought out to say, like, how would we analyze that? How would we isolate where the cause of the pain is? Maybe your low back hurts, but is that because like your hip doesn't move enough, and so the low back is compensating? Does your low back hurt because it itself is injured, like there's a disc injury or something? And it kind of takes all those into account, but does it in a very quick, systematic fashion. And I feel like it gets me very accurate most of the time. So it's like that Anchorman saying, 80% of the time it works every time. I feel like that's pretty much it. I mean, in some cases, like, McKinsey protocol might be better. In some cases, other diagnostic testing might be better, but it gets you pretty damn good, pretty damn fast.
Okay. So you're teaching those classes?
Correct. Yeah.
And you're teaching A.R.T. still?
No, I don't teach A.R.T. I haven't taught A.R.T. for a few years now. It kind of, my eyes twinkled more with the S.F.M.A. And so I chased that. Okay.
And then are you teaching still for the golf?
Yeah, I just taught a T.P.I. course, and I also teach a baseball course called On Base U. That's under the umbrella of T.P.I., but it's focused more on baseball hitters.
Hey, this is Dr. Rich, and we will return to this great interview in just a second. But first, I want to speak to the chiropractic students and those who maybe just graduated. How successful could you be if you had a resource that helped clarify your vision, helped you develop a plan, saved you money, time, and heartache, shortened your learning curve, and helped set you on a course to become profitable in your first few months after opening? Well, that information can be found in our Chiro Planner. Yes, Dr. Haley and I have written a book. It's more than just a journal. It's a guide to creating and launching your practice in 100 days. It's jam-packed with tools, tips, ideas, action steps, resources, and inspiring quotes from some of the top chiropractors and business leaders today, including some of the great guests we have had on this show. So think of it as your own personal mentor, inspiring you, answering your questions, helping you to set goals, and advising you on the many unknowns of opening a practice. Go to chiroplanner.com today to order your copy. Now back to the interview.
Yeah.
And are you still practicing in Nevada?
I just have a list of private, a short list of private clients that I work with. I have some professional, I had some professional baseball players, but they all went back to season. I have some decent single-digit handicap golfers here in town, and then some private, I don't know what you would call them, business owners that are very dedicated to their health. And I kind of take care of locally here.
And then you have I saw you post recently that you are very good at using Zapier. And this is, I'm intrigued because I don't have much luck with it. So but I want to know, how have you used Zapier? Have you used that in your practice, or what other things are you using to kind of to help you with time management, keep things efficient? What do you recommend?
Yeah. So, I mean, for those, who don't know, Zapier is and Haley, I didn't know this either. Whenever I talked to anybody about it early on when I was learning, they called it Zapier, and I would say Zapier. And they would always say, you don't perform a Zape, you perform a Zap. I was like,
okay.
And I always think, yeah, you don't get invited to parties, do you?
That's okay.
Anyway, so Zapier is a software that takes two programs that may not talk to each other, and it gets them to talk to each other. So why that's useful, say, in chiropractic. You can build a pretty damn good EMR if you don't have a lot of patients. Like for me, I have a short list of private people. Like a big day for me would be 4 people, probably, 2 to 4 people. So I'm not talking about a ton of notes. Like if you have 20 people a day, I think you need a dedicated EMR. But anyways, you could build a really good one with Zapier because it'll take Google Sheets. And if you, for example, let me see if I can describe this. In Google Sheets, so it's like a spreadsheet, right? And if you set it up and you have the columns as the date of service, then the patient's name, then the, let's say VAS score, pain scale 0 to 10, and then any findings. If you just type that into that spreadsheet row, Zapier is sitting there in the background looking for a new row that has text in it in that spreadsheet. So, it will, when it sees that there's a new row, that's a trigger event. So it's like, okay, there's a new row. What do I do? Well, if you set it up, what you can have it do is make an automatic entry into your, let's say, Google Doc. So it'll take that information and then put it in a template form in your, in a Google Doc that already exists. So you can, let's say I was taking care, today is, let's say it's May 1st, just for ease. May 1st, I'm taking care of Haley Day, and her pain scale is 3 out of 10 today. And by the way, she had a positive right Kemp's test, and she also had an SLR that was positive at 30 degrees for pain in the low back, right? I put all that in a spreadsheet row, which for me would be very fast, and you can actually dictate that. What would happen is once I'm done entering that, Zapier is in the background looking, and then immediately it would create a Google Doc that says, Haley Day was treated today for 3 out of 10 pain. It would write it out in narrative form, right? But I don't have to do the narrative. I just have to put in the details, and it creates that for me. So that's just one way you can use it for like note taking. But you can also use it in other ways to do tasks. So I have a consulting company where I walk people through I really believe in the blended clinic and gym model. So I think that the gym is a great way to offer ongoing care to your patients after they're out of pain. So I do a lot of marketing for that in the consulting. So there are a lot of people on Facebook that might send me a message. Everybody that sends me a message could be added to a list to get email from me. Or I can take one of our clients is running ads on Facebook to get people in his gym. Ads on Facebook. It takes that, Zapier takes that information, puts it into a Google Sheet, and then it sends a text message to him. Hey, you got a new person on the sheet here. He does that, and that's the trigger for the office to call that person immediately. When they get a text from Zapier saying there's a new person added to the sheet, and they look at the sheet, call the number, and say, "Oh, Haley, this is so and so at community gym. We saw that you signed up on Facebook. We'd love to have you come in. When would you like to come in for an appointment?" Right? Like it, but it gets those things to talk, and it helps you take action. So it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife.
I like that you're using it for notes, because I think some chiros, when they graduate, they think they need to spend $200 a month on notes, when really they could just start like that.
Yeah. There's a great article out there. Like, I think it's by a guy named Aaron LeBauer, who's like a cash-based physical therapy consultant. But he and another PT did this whole great thing on how to use Google, like the Google suite of tools, as a really good EMR. And you're right. Like if you're only seeing a few people a day, like you don't, I think everybody builds for the practice they think they're going to have when they open, and then quickly cuts back. Like Google's free. And, for those of you listening, like go to Google, buy a domain for your website, and then sign up for G Suite, which is a way to do, like, instead of it being like, Dr. Joe Smith at Gmail, it'll say like Dr. Joe Smith at smithchiropractic.com. You buy the domain through Google, you can set up the email really easily, and it has amazing tools. I mean, way more than you'll need when you first start, and you can build it up to be. So we're building a fairly large company that'll have multiple doctors in it right now for a different project. And, I was talking to a guy, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Google will scale with you very well." He said it doesn't work so well when you have like 10,000 employees. I'm like, okay, I'll keep that one in mind. But I think for most like private practice people, that is the best. And it's run by Google. So as long as you have an internet connection, they're keeping all the infrastructure maintained. I mean, I'm sure you remember, like back in the day, like if you wanted ChiroTouch, it was like, that's great. You got to buy a $7,000 server that's just going to sit in your back room, and oh, by the way, there's also software on top of that, but you need the hardware as well. And now I think, with like a Chromebook on the front desk, and I think there's a way to get Google Chrome to run on an Amazon Fire tablet, like a Kindle. Dude, if you have that in you have a little tablet in your room that only costs $20. You're working with patients. Focus all your money on marketing or advertising or having lunch with people that you build a relationship with. I think that's a much better use than a $7,000 server sitting in the back room.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't even think ChiroTouch sells them like ChiroTouch that way anymore. But for sure, I think, we started with paper for a couple of years. And
that's worked. That's worked, I would say, from the time of Christ, but they used stone back then. But paper worked.
Yeah, we used paper, and then as soon as we had money, we bought ChiroTouch and implemented it. But but we didn't need to. And I think now you definitely don't need to. There are just so many ways around it. So
I know I hate sounding like an old fart, like, oh, back in our day, you had to buy a $7,000 server. But like, again, like if I look at the advantages that these students have in school, like the exposure to amazing techniques is higher than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. The acceptance, like, the ability, like the free technology that exists, is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. The amount of resources out there is incredible, and the acceptance of chiropractic has never been bigger. I don't think that there's a better health profession. I always say there's never been a better time to be a chiropractor, and I truly believe that. I agree.
And I think starting small, there's nothing wrong with starting slim.
It's the best.
Use that money to enjoy life. So
yeah, my friend always says, early on when I was like, oh, we need this and we need paint, we need this big picture and all this. He like grabs me by the arm one day and he goes, listen, get your emotional needs met at the bank. Don't think that like this, fancy car or whatever is going to emotionally fill you up. Like, get your emotional needs met at the bank, meaning like when you're depositing checks because your business is doing well, that's a good feeling, Mm-hmm. And when the checks that are going out the door for rent and a phone system and computers and all that are less than what you put in, it feels even better. You don't need much.
And I've seen doctors, they're very proud to say that they've spent $30,000 on their website and maintenance and advertising. And I'd rather spend that time on spend that money on other things.
Yeah. I mean, if you're like, hey, we spent $30,000 for XYZ that gives your patients an amazing experience. For example, I hate with a passion when I go to a doctor's office, I fill out my name and an address, like on the first page of the information packet, on the fourth page, on the sixth page, on the seventh page. I'm like, I'm not getting a home mortgage here. I'm just coming in for a 20-minute visit. Like, I don't want to put this information multiple times. If you're like, we spent $2,000 and found a way that they only sign once, and they only put in their information once, or we pre-populate it, I think that's money well spent, because that is showing the patient that you care, that you're investing. But if it's back office stuff that you're like, oh yeah, we have these super comfortable ergonomic chairs at our desk while we're sitting that we don't sit in all day because we're working with patients, like what? Like, sit on a bucket. Invest the money in the patients. Like, I think it's important to have like not expensive, but just clean and organized bathrooms. So spending a little bit of money on a cabinet that holds paper towel or toilet paper and looks nice and has a plant on it or something, like that's worth it. But spending a bunch of money on, something else that I'm just like, what's the point here?
For sure. Now, a lot of our marketing money went to actually just donations in the community that we're in.
Yeah, that's great.
To athletic teams, that kind of stuff. So,
and it feels good, right? Like,
oh yeah, it feels good and it looks good. You can post pictures and big checks and all that thing. But I think, for me, by the way,
if you ever buy like one of those signs like at a Little League field, the best part is like once they get the initial sponsors, they say, oh, it's for a year, and it's like, but nobody ever puts in the effort to go take the sign down. It lives until the field gets rebuilt.
That's good information. So what's something that hasn't worked? Like, do you have a $100,000 EHR you bought or anything?
All right, I'll tell you one. So like a lot of people talk about like Facebook ads and all that. So we had, I'm just doing some math in my head here. We had about $6,000 that we were going to use for marketing, and I set up some Facebook ads, and not calculating my dollars right, we spent about $12,000 out of that $6,000. And then we did not have a system to follow up when we got people who responded to the ad. Mm-hmm. And so we basically let that whatever you want to say. We let the $6,000 and the $12,000, the $12,000 because we were running too many ads at the same time. All that money basically disappeared. And because we didn't follow up, it was a waste. So now you have a bunch of people that have said, hey, I'm interested. And then you don't follow up with them. And so now they have a sour taste in their mouth about not being able to do business with you. So that didn't work. And that was tough to recover from. The other thing that I think, looking back, we got an offer to work or to run the exercise and injury prevention program at a country club. And they were building a brand new fitness space and they're going to give us free rent and everything. And it seemed like a great deal. I would tell everybody, if you have the opportunity to open a second location, do not do it until your first location is absolutely locked down and runs without you. Because I was going over to the second location twice a week, and there was an hour out of my day, at least an hour, sometimes an hour and a half of travel. It was across town. Our manager, who was hired and paid to manage both sites, didn't really manage the second one, and kind of expected me to manage it because I was on site there. But wasn't checking in with the employees on the days I wasn't there and stuff. And it never really generated any money for us. Nothing to speak of. I think it probably covered its costs of payroll and stuff of having a trainer there. But yeah, it just was like not a good solution. It's like, oh, well, we're going to have the second location. We're going to really grow. It's like, it takes so much effort to get that one off the ground as well that like, I don't think that a second location works until you have enough staff that you're covering the first location. And like literally, here'd be my test. Could you take 2 weeks off and go on vacation before you start that second location? And if the answer is yeah, I could do that, I think you're okay. That's not where we were at that moment.
Okay. That's good advice. I get that question a lot because we had a couple practices. And so the students, when I go talk at Cleveland, will ask me how and when. And I think that's a good, you have to be secure that the first one's working properly.
Yeah. I mean, what was your experience like opening your second one? Did it add to or pull energy out?
Well, we had the two of us. So then Rich actually started working at the school. And so the practice wasn't as much of a business per se, I guess. But I was at home running both. So the first one did run without either of us. And then I was able to run them from home. It's 600 miles away because we had one in Colorado and one in Kansas City. So we were able to step out of the one fully. And then I just managed it from home. And then the second one, it went fine. It was good. I think, we had to be more in a secure spot because we did move. Whereas you were kind of, taking on this two in the same location almost. Yeah. So I could see it being, well, you're not taking as much precaution as we did. Like we had set up systems, we had implemented, employee handbooks and that kind of thing. So,
man, you guys are like total like adults in practice and stuff.
Well, we try.
Yeah, that's good.
Also had 3 kids in 3 years, so then that blew it up.
Wow.
Well, let's move on. So you have a podcast too. Tell me about your podcast.
Yeah, it's called Clinic Gym Radio. You can find it. Search the App Store for the podcast for Clinic Gym Radio. It's on Google Play and iTunes and everywhere. And basically what it was, so like I told you, I have that business that talks about integrating a gym onto your clinic. I just think that that's really the best maintenance care, quote unquote, is providing really good exercise for your people in between the times they need your chiropractic care. And it's a good way to make some money. Like it's a recurring monthly revenue. So that membership money comes in every month. So it starts out small. At first you're like, oh, I have, three clients in the gym and it's not really making any money. But when you have 30 and you know that membership money's coming in, I'm telling you, like business gets real easy. It gets really, really fun because you already have that money that's coming in. So based on that, I was like, well, I want to talk to some people that are doing this or different businesses business lessons that I have learned, and I want to share that with people. So started the podcast, and the first 10 of them, if anybody goes back and listens to the very first 10, that was basically the 10 things I think you need to have in order to start that. One of which was like, we had an account, and it sounds funny, but we had an accountant on, which I think he's the only exciting accountant to listen to that I've ever discovered. Most accountants are pretty dry, but I think the claim to fame of my podcast is even the accountant was fun to listen to. And those first 10, we have a lesson on marketing. A guy talks about the good, better, best method of marketing, like offering your patient 3 things and then letting them choose. We did the accountant. We did an attorney, I think, is on there, and a bunch of things just like how to start it. So if you're a student or you're like, I want to get going, or I'm going to, leaving an associateship and I want to do this, I think the first 10 episodes of the Clinic Gym Radio will help you do that. And then along the way, I've just talked to every interesting person I could that's running a clinic gym hybrid facility. So Greg Rose, the founder of T.P.I, ran one with when he was in practice with for golfers, blended model of the clinic when they were injured and the gym between injuries. Talked to people like, I don't know if you know Brett Winchester. He was pretty interesting. Trying to think of other ones. Bobby Mabey, who's involved in the Forward Thinking Chiropractic Alliance, or he's the founder of that. They're really pushing the envelope. Bill Morgan, who's over at Parker University. Who else? Recently I talked to a couple students, like when you're talking about, students and what they do. I talked to a couple students from Cleveland, actually, Nolan and Mai. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of meeting them, but I talked to them at the Parker seminar because I wanted to kind of capture like a snapshot of here they are. Like at that time, they were maybe 3 months from graduating. So about as much as you've learned from the didactic portion, you've integrated a little bit in clinic, but they're right at the kind of edge of the cliff of jumping into practice. And I kind of wanted to capture it. And maybe a year from now, I hope to re-interview them and see like, how are things going and what's it like compared to what you thought it was going to be like? Because as my friend told me, there is no way to teach you how to swim when we're standing next to the pool. Like, it just doesn't work. And the things that you think are going to be a big deal typically aren't. And the things that you totally didn't expect become a huge deal. So I'm hoping to capture that with them, probably whatever it is, 10 months from now. Mm-hmm. So I think I have a good kind of mix of guests and subjects, all focused around that idea of this integrated clinic and gym.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I like that you have I want to listen to all 10, the first 10. I want to listen to all of them, but the first 10 seem like they would be very helpful.
Yeah.
I think
we're getting up to close to 100. I think we're like 92-ish, something like that. Yeah. So
there's plenty to Netflix and chill on your podcast.
That's right. Yeah. If you own 2 acres of land and a very small lawnmower, you can load them up and start listening.
I mow our lawn and I do listen to podcasts.
That's the best. Yeah.
So in terms of success in business, what do you see that separates the very successful docs from those that are struggling?
I think it's the same as you see like in anything, sports, practice, weightlifting, any of those things, consistency, which self-admittedly is the absolute hardest thing for me, but consistency. When I'm consistent about putting out podcasts, for example, when I'm consistent about doing webinars, good things happen in my business. When I'm not consistent, bad things happen. And I think if I were somebody just starting up a brand new practice, I would live the most consistent, boring life I could, meaning I'd wake up every day at the same time consistently. I'd put on the same outfit. I'd have my Monday outfit, my Tuesday outfit, my Wednesday. Like that way you just don't have to worry about it. I'd go to the same coffee shop and say hi to everybody there. I'd shake hands with freaking everybody there and introduce myself. The same one every day. And then I'd go to the same gym to work out every day as marketing and as, keeping yourself mentally healthy, physically healthy, and just exposure to people. And I would, if you're somebody that sends regular emails, I would do that consistently. If you shoot YouTube videos, I would do that consistently. If you're like, I want to write a newsletter for my people, cool. I would just, whatever you do, just start it and don't ever stop it for 3 years. And then, so anything you take on when you open your practice, go, can I do this every week for the next 3 years? And I think if you do that, you'll come out the other side doing well. If you're like Jason Holm, a good friend of mine, and he wanted to build relationships with local doctors, so he went out every week consistently and built relationships. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but he got like 50 weeks out of the year he was in an office meeting and talking, you know?
And I think at 3 years, you're like, you are going to be on top. I mean, because I see this a lot with students. I work with a lot of, new grads as they're starting off. They'll call and ask questions because my husband gives them my number. And
isn't that called pawning off?
I think so. And I feel like they think, I've been doing this a whole month and it's just not working. Or I've been doing this a few months and it's just not working. And honestly, I love that you said 3 years, because I say at least a year and probably 2 years. And then I think definitely at 3 years, you're rolling. You're going to have an abundant practice. But
yeah, but the first year is like just okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not 3 times the first year. It's 3 squared or something. I don't know how to say it. Like it's like hockey stick growth. It's like a really good infection, Yeah. It takes off.
And it sounds like it's not, it sounds like a long time, but it really isn't. It goes quick. And I really think that if you're consistent, I was just telling someone this the other day, if you're consistent and you do it, in 3 years, you will leap. It's not even like a gradual thing. So I love that you said that.
Yeah. It's hard though. I don't want people to think like saying that, like being cavalier, like that is freaking hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think being consistent is really hard. I think one of the benefits that my husband and I had was we had each other. We were in it together every day. Yeah. We kept each other accountable. We moved forward. We picked each other up. We, provided other, like, let's try this. Let's, kind of try, think outside the box together. Yeah. So,
and I'm sure that there was times when either one of you or both felt like complete, like, just felt
like it wasn't working.
Right. And it's funny. You'll doubt yourself, but you look across and you're like, you can do it. Yeah. I can't do it. I'm a total failure in life right now, but you can do it because I believe in you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's great. It just is. It takes time and it takes effort and it's consistency. So
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your daily rituals.
So, as I was building my practice and the gym and everything, I was coaching at 5:30 a.m., which meant I was out the door at 4:55 and got home after the class ended at 6:30. So I was getting home about 7. So I spent a lot of time away. So right now we're in the season of me, spending more mornings and evenings at home. So that means that my wife gets a lot of work done in the morning. So she goes to our home office, a little guest house, and she goes in there to work. I get our boys up. We have 2 boys, 9 and 6. I wake them up, get them fed, pack their lunch, take them to school. And then typically I spend 2 to 3 hours of a mixture of writing. I enjoy writing. So I write a lot of emails and a lot of content, but, writing, answering emails, and then, what I would consider work stuff. So like this is a work stuff. Type thing. So this will take an hour. So I get that done. Then I try and have once or twice a week, I try and have lunch with somebody, in the community, whether it's a attorney, doctor, another, professional or a friend. I'm just a social butterfly. So I like spending time. And then try and get in an afternoon workout, then pick up the boys, from school. And then we pass the baton, which means I get the boys home, they get a snack, and then my wife is now finishing work. And so she takes them to whatever the heck we have that day, golf, taekwondo, piano, whatever. So yeah, works well.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite book you recommend?
For what? Do
you read, right? We're mostly business, I would say. Like business, marketing, something.
So 2 of them, I think. All right. So the best book I've read in the last year was Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. And she's a researcher all about like human interaction and connection. And I think if you are a owner of a business and you have 1 or more employees, that book is like the Bible of how to interact with people, like how to phrase the conversation and not motivate them. That's a bad choice of words, but how to make sure you're all on the same page emotionally or interpersonally or whatever you want to call that. Like, are you jiving or is there friction? Because I think one of the biggest, when you start growing your practice and you have employees, the biggest thing is the internal friction. If you could eliminate that, you could take over the world. But if I'm spending 1 minute a day going, oh, man, is she not, answering the phone because she doesn't like me or she's just disrespectful or whatever? And then I go, if you can get to like, hey, how come you're not picking up the phone? Oh, I thought Susie was doing it. Like, okay, well, you mind doing it? No, that's fine. Like if you can get to that where your feedback loop is so tight because you believe in me and I believe in you, like it's easy. The whole world becomes easy. So anyways, that was the best book. I think from a business structure, especially if somebody's like, listen, I'm thinking about bringing on a second chiropractor or having a second location, or I really want to get my business systems correct. The absolute best book I've ever read is Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. It's a textbook. It is like a frickin' guide of how to build a huge business once you know what the hell you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a big purple book. It's only offered in hardcover, but man, I think it's awesome. I would grab that book, read it in a month, and then that once you're done with it, schedule. It's going to suggest that you do like a yearly offsite. I would schedule that offsite meeting, and I get very clear about what you're doing. And I think once you kind of understand the market, you plan that first offsite. I think you can double or triple in 1 year without working more hours, which is that's a very monumental task there. But because you figure out what are your processes, what really matters, and what doesn't. Do we really need $7,000 of hardware, or whatever?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Those are 2 new ones. Thank you. Last question, what's your best business advice you ever received?
Best business advice. I think if you're not in business yet, there's no way to explain it. It's like you just got to jump in the water and start swimming, and you realize, oh wow, I can't actually breathe when my face is in the water. It's like, oh yeah, we forgot to tell you that part. But that's what it's like. I don't know. Like it's literally like me trying to teach you to swim, like looking at huge waves on the beach in Hawaii. Like, let's swim. It's going to suck. You're going to get your butt kicked, but man, it's going to be so sweet when we're out there. But best business advice. One thing that drives me nuts, especially like if you're marketing, like please step back and go like, how would a human being respond or receive this information?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, this is easy. I'm going to use this automated process. And it's like, so like we went and got our SUV, like had some work done at the what do we call it? The mechanic, right? Yeah. So they want to get some feedback about how they're doing. So I get this automated call like, hello, this is a call from Dollar Automotive. Like, like this, the two-tone kind of BS conversation. So I did what any human being would do and I hung up. Like, I don't have time for this. So then I get a text and it's like this, you could not, like if you were making a comedy movie about how to send an automated text, this would look ridiculous in that movie. So in real life, it is super, ridiculous. And it was like this long text and like respond 1 if you liked your service and respond 3 if you didn't, respond 5 if you want a callback from one of our customer service specialists. I'm like there is no human being, like you're not going to get any data here because this is not how human beings interact, And I think if you just like, if you want if you're going to send out a survey, like, people, which is awesome, like send out a survey, but make it like the way you talk as a human. Deliver it in the way you would want to receive it. Like, this is why Apple took over the world, is like, how about we operate a phone or click on a button the way that a human would want to do it, not a computer programmer. And people are always like, oh yeah, but the Samsung has more capability. Yeah, right. Computer capability, but not human capability, which is what really sells. So keep flying the flag of how much more powerful your thing is, except it doesn't connect with human beings. And we all know in all the movies, the sci-fi movies, the computers always fail to human emotion, you know? So I think the same is in business.
I like that. I mean, in our practice, we treated patients like we would want people to treat our family if we referred them to them.
Yeah.
And then we treated
the same thing like
we worked with like we would want to be treated, you know, and it all worked out.
Yeah. Like, just look at, if somebody's coming into your office for the first time, what would you tell your friend? Like, would you say, our address is 1625 East Lombard Street in, Clinton, Missouri? Or would you say, Haley, which direction are you coming from? Oh, I'm coming from, I'm going to be getting off work at that time, so I'm coming down here. Okay. So, cool. You're going to drive north like you're driving out of town, and you know where the big blue building is on the right? Like, as you leave? Yeah, I do. Okay, make a right there, and we're the yellow building on the left. Right? Now, did I use any numbers in that description? No, I talked to you like a friend. So in my email that says like, hey, Haley, we're excited to meet you this afternoon for your initial patient visit. By the way, if you're coming from, Clinton, drive like you're driving out of town. When you make a right at the big blue building, we're the next building on the left that's yellow. Or here's a crazy thought. If it was really important, I'd probably send my friend a picture. You ever done that? Like, you go to meet somebody at a restaurant. It's like, oh, the door's not on the parking lot. It's actually over here. And I take a picture and send it. Then do that for your patients. Like, this is not rocket science. Like act like you're trying. If you're giving directions to your clinic for the first time, act like you're giving them to the oldest living relative in your family. Like, make it so easy, so foolproof that they would be able to find you at that time. And if your parking lot is a pain in the ass, tell them that. Our parking is a little bit tight. So if you see a spot, take it.
I love that. So now can you tell us how people can find you?
Yeah. So just go to 123.abc. I'm just going to make it crazy. So again, I believe in adding a gym to your clinic. So if you go to clinicgymhybrid.com, you can find everything about us or listen to the podcast, but everything is clinicgymhybrid.com. We just had a big conference in Austin. Hopefully that's our first annual. And they can listen to the podcast. They can opt in. So if you opt in, you're going to get a PDF of like how to add a gym to your clinic in 6 months. It's very simplistic, but the idea is just get you thinking. And then I try and send out probably 4 or 5 emails a week with everything from invitations to webinars to just good information, things I'm observing in the marketplace and changes that we're seeing. So yesterday was a couple tips on hiring. Let's see, the day before that was all about how to set your prices based upon your local market. So just stuff like that we see. And then anytime I identify a change or I see something coming up that I'm happen to see in a lot of places, I want to identify those trends so people can flourish.
Helpful stuff. Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. It's a pleasure talking to you and getting to know you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Haley. I appreciate you having me on. And definitely let me know when this comes out.
Okay. Have a great day.
Thank you.